All right, here we go for another episode of Empty the Bench, episode 195. Tom Albano, Nick Morgasen. Follow us on social media at ETB Sports, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at ETB Sports. Follow the Empty the Bench podcast network at ETB Network, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. Follow us on YouTube as we approach 500 subscribers, youtube.com/ETB Network. Follow our website at, etbpodcast.com. Almost had a brain fart there. But follow our website.
You did have a brain fart. You said
yeah,
Twitter.
I did. I said Twitter. Website. Yes, X, not Twitter. I'm going to still call it Twitter, but whatever. etbpodcast.com also for all our websites and blogs and more information as well. Follow us on the audio platforms as well. If you're not watching on the video platforms, Acast, iHeart, Spotify, no longer Stitch, Apple Podcasts. You can find us all on our audio platforms. All right. We got a lot to get into this week. College football, basketball, all college sports realignment has gone haywire. So we will break down the college realignment. That's usually not our thing, but Tom and I did a lot of research into the college realignment fiasco, and we'll break that all down as well. Also, baseball. Yes, baseball is in the headlines.
Not
this
for some
week.
good reasons, though. The first one, I think the first one you could argue, depending on who you are, it could be a good reason. Down goes Anderson! Down goes Anderson!
Yes, so Tim Anderson gets suspended, Jose Ramirez gets suspended, big altercation happens, and Rob Manfred goes, no, you can't do that. And speaking of other baseball matters, Orioles announcer Kevin Brown. Yes. Why am I only leaving it at that? You'll know why in a few minutes.
And then football side, we got Alvin Kamara suspended 3 games officially for his role in the fight that happened in February. The altercation at the bar got him arrested during Pro Bowl weekend. And then in basketball, to round things out, Anthony Davis got an extension.
Well, he got an extension, but it's for not as much money as you think. Most people are not going to understand this when I explain it, but they'll understand it. He
still has the richest annual extension in NBA history now.
Technically. But,
okay,
all right, let's get into it. College realignment, right off the bat, is the lead headline over this past week or so. Oregon and Washington moving to the Big Ten. Arizona State, and Utah to the Big 12. Is the ACC going to add Cal and Stanford? Pac-12 down to 4 schools. As the
I was going to say, and you got a couple of different conferences are looking to nab at those 4 schools. You got the AAC, who is interested. And then you've got the MWC, the Midwest Conference, who there's now this rumor developing that they might merge with the Pac-12.
So the Pac-12 is now the Pac-4. That's where we're basically at this point.
And
so
college realignments are basically, this is just a big game of musical chairs around the nation.
Right. So college realignment is happening. Let's just be real. They're all chasing that huge television money, which is coming out. They're looking for that money. They know Apple is involved. They were talking to the Pac-12 before it decided to Tasmanian Devil itself. But now they're the Pac-4. Now those schools need to find a place because I think by rule, you have to have at least 8 teams.
Yeah.
You have to have 8 teams to be able to compete in division. So we know the Pac-12 is done, essentially. Now, people are going to say, oh, it was the Conference of Champions for 100 years. And you had the Rose Bowl, which, by the way, the Rose Bowl will never be what it once was now that the Pac-12 is completely gone, garbage, doesn't exist anymore.
And we have the and now that we have the bowl system that we have today with the playoffs and such.
The expanded playoffs.
The expanded playoffs, yeah. And supposedly they're going to expand again, they've been looking at.
How can we expand if we don't know where the teams are going to be? That's like playing a game of musical chairs, and when you go to sit down, there's no chair there. Trust me, I know that from experience.
You're all out. You all lose.
You all lose. So it was funny, though. I was watching an interview with Greg Sankey, who's the SEC commissioner, was on the Paul Feinbaum show. And basically, he was talking about the Pac-12 being on the verge of collapse after 100 years.
Mm-hmm.
And I just found it interesting because it was such a big conference. It was one of the more meaningful conferences. The USCs of the world. I mean, like, You have the UCLA's, USC's. Now we don't have a Pac-12 anymore. Now we don't. Do you remember the game when we were kids? I think it was, what was it, Matt Leinart and Vince Young in the Rose Bowl?
Yeah,
What was that? That was that was USC, and that was I forgot what
Texas.
team in Texas. But I'm just saying, like, that was big way back when. I remember that
Right.
when we were kids.
I remember having like an eye on that game, and I wasn't even into college sports at that time. That was like at 8 or so years old, 10 years old, whatever it was. My first real exposure to college football.
Right. And now, because all these teams, and it's unbelievable, the college business is booming. Sometimes more than the professional business is booming.
Mm-hmm. Well, think
So,
about it, and
yeah.
I mean, even our friend Johnny from Game On has it, like, because he lives in South Carolina there. Uh, Down there, especially when you've got, places where there is no NFL team, so your Carolinas, your Alabama, like college football is life down there. And even in some places down south and Midwest and such, even if they have an NFL team, sometimes the college football team is the main team. It's the big one.
I mean, we're fortunate enough to live in New York, so we have all our professional teams.
Right
But,
here,
like,
college is kind. I can't say it's bad, but it kind of
it's
lacks.
gone. It's non-existent. Let's
We
just be
don't have
real.
that. Well, I mean, it's hard to compete as a college team when you've got the Yankees and the Giants and the Jets and the Rangers and the Knicks and the Mets and the
I mean,
Nets.
you want you want to throw St. John's in there? Maybe that's the most prominent college name here, in my opinion.
Right. I
But
mean, Rutgers down in Jersey.
but we're in what they call professional sports state. That's where
Yeah.
we are. But like you said, where Johnny is in South Carolina, it's college sports, and that's what they have down there. That's what they're used to. But just all the realignment. I'm used to seeing like one, maybe two teams. This is a lot. 8 teams left the Pac-12.
Right. And that's not taking into consideration all these upper ones that are listed on here. The fact that Oregon and Washington, it seems all signs are pointing to a move to the Big Ten. You've got three different schools: Arizona, Arizona State, and Utah, moving over to the Big 12. That Cal and Stanford, two teams. If I think it was Cal and Stanford who played a legendary game back in the 1980s. They might be jumping over to the ACC.
Well,
So
so let me give you one thing. So it doesn't make sense for the ACC to add Cal and Stanford. They're talking about how it makes their TV contract, because technically, I was reading the ACC has a TV contract through 2037.
yeah, but I think you and I are going to get to the same point, and that some of these conferences now, how conferences were always in regions, and now it's all scattered all over the United States.
We're talking about cross country trips if Cal and Stanford ended up in the ACC. That's what would happen. And you're going to put the burden on these students. Now, let me be careful with that, because what's burden on the students with NIL when they're getting paid anyway?
Okay, I'm glad you brought that up, because here's the thing, and the thing that I'm most concerned about with these alignments, and it was my concern also with NILs and pay for these athletes. We're always looking at it in the context of football, because football is the sport that brings in all the revenue, and basketball as well. But think about this: with football, it's only one game a week, one road trip that you got to make a week. What about the baseball and softball teams who got to play all over, who have road trips, throughout the months of March and April and May? What about, the soccer teams who have to make some road trips? I'm like trying to think of all the different sport. What about, say, hockey and the road trip sometimes they'll have to make?
I
Like,
mean, they're not thinking of it that way, unfortunately. They're
I
thinking
know, but
more.
I'm saying, like, usually when you had to deal with, like, I'll give you an example with the school that I went to, Ryder, and the one that we shared with Hofstra, that, when it's very cold up here, obviously they always played down in the south and around the country in March when in places where the weather was warmer. Now you're talking about late March, early April for those baseball and softball teams when they're playing within their conferences, the opponents they do have to play. You had the advantage of being in the region. Now there's a chance you'll have to go across the country and back.
Well,
So you're going
yeah,
to
we're
put
talking about cross country trips.
right lacrosse teams as well. So it's like, yeah, you're talking about, you can say, oh, but they got the NILs and such. Yeah, that's good and maybe understandable with the football team. But what about the guys in the sports that have less revenue? Like, that's really unfair on them.
Okay. I'm sure you've heard me say this before, and I'm going to say it again. They don't care. All they care about is one thing.
The money. So they're going to care about the football and the basketball, basically.
Yes. Of course, it's always going to be. Well, number one is always going to be football. I don't care as long as your college program has football, that's what they're going to care about for the money. Now, Paul was saying on 3&D last episode that one of the schools was looking to get into one of the conferences, but they actually didn't have a football program, and that's a requirement to get into some of these divisions. So if you don't have a football program, you won't even be considered for one of the big major conferences. Mm-hmm. But this is all about money. Like everyone say, oh, well, it's about the students. It's about the traveling issues. Back when there was no NIL and the students were being abused for travel, that would have been the right argument. But now that they're being paid NIL and they're making millions of dollars, I don't want to hear about abuse for travel.
But Nick, again, you're thinking only in the lines of the college football and basketball athletes. You're not taking into consideration, like, let's face it, how many college track kids are going to get NILs? How many college?
There actually are some that do.
I know, but not everybody. You think about some of these smaller schools, this is going to put a lot of burden on them.
I agree, but at the same time, like we had a whole fight about how the students were not getting paid or not getting stuff. Now we got through that. Now this is kind of the next iteration, which is conference realignment and figuring out where they can make the most money for TV deals.
Understood. But I mean, we talked about those athletes and let's call them the non-revenue sports. They were also the issue when it came to NILs about how they were going to get affected. And now it's again with the realignment. But of course, nobody is going to be looking at that. They're only going to be looking at it from this context of those two college sports, which puts a lot of burden on those athletes, those student athletes who are in the non-revenue sports. Puts a lot of burden on us as teachers who, now these guys. And here's my concern. If you want to bring my personal to this, we're doing this at the college level now. Who's not to say in 5 to 10 years, all of a sudden now everything's going to start to trickle down to the high school level?
I wouldn't be surprised if that happened because colleges start recruiting all the way to sophomore year of high school in certain aspects. So that I agree with you that that's going to be an issue. But at the same time, again, I'll do it again. It's about money. Most schools, most of their revenue comes from two sports: college basketball and college football. That's where the money comes from. The other ones, and colleges are not going to be happy when I say this, but the other sports are irrelevant. They're there so that teams can compete. The college football and the college basketball is what keeps them in business. I'm not saying that to be mean. I'm just pointing out a fact. That's more the issue I'm talking about here.
Understood. I'm just saying that those sports, those, let's call them the non-revenue sports, they still have to be within the consideration.
I agree with you. And I think it's wrong that these athletes are not taken into consideration. But when you go and talk to a USC or a Cal or a Stanford or any other Big 10 school or Big 12 or Pac-12 school, what sport are they asking about first?
Football and basketball.
Right. And if the football's making them the most money, it's making them the most money. Some schools wouldn't be able to stay in business without the football. It's just the fact of the matter.
So at this point, then I could see it within a couple of years at this point that we're just going to have 10 conferences or something like that.
You know how we talked about in the NBA, they wanted to do one giant just list of 32 teams or 30 teams, whatever it was, and just take the top 16 teams because it would make more sense because you'd probably end up with more Western Conference teams at that point just because it's stronger.
Right.
I think I could see something like that happening here in college football where they just say, screw the divisions, put everybody together, and just figure it out because that's where we're getting at this point. There's so much conference realignment and everyone's moving around. Just put it all together.
It feels like college sports is just becoming its own professional sport in a way.
You're right. Exactly. I think that's a great way to put it.
And that's why I said I'm concerned about, because now if that trickles down into the high school level, now we're talking about kids who wouldn't even have a high school education where all of a sudden now, because when you're the college athlete, it's like, okay, sports, and classes is just on the side. If you put that attitude at the high school level and you put the chance in there that these athletes may struggle to or not get a high school diploma at all, now you're really damaging their life prospects if sports doesn't work out.
And let's be real. I would say the top 1% make it as professional athletes, or is that too low?
Yeah,
I don't know.
100%.
So if you're, like you said, bringing that attitude down to the high school level, where let's just say 99% of us need to get degrees because then we're never going to do anything if we don't.
Mhm.
It's just, but now you're bringing this attitude. I can be a professional athlete. If I just make it to the professional level, I'll make my millions of dollars. And then I hit the lottery and I don't have to do anything else anymore. It doesn't work like that. It just doesn't. And now that these athletes are getting paid in college, some of them don't even worry about getting to the professional level at some point because they're getting an influencer NIL deals.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
This is a mess, and basically nobody's happy at this point except the NCAA and certain conferences. That's it.
And the ACC wouldn't win with Cal and Stanford. Would it give them more value? Yes, but then you're going to travel all the way across the coast to play two teams. Whatever. It is what it is. There's going to be more to it.
Yeah, it's an absolute mess right now. And speaking of an absolute mess, Tim Anderson is an absolute mess. So Tim Anderson, Jose Ramirez got into a little scuffle during a game. Jose Ramirez came hard into second base. Tim Anderson supposedly had tagged Jose Ramirez hard. The two of them end up in a, like, Jose Ramirez gets up, asks, "What the hell are you doing?" And then Anderson just quickly throws up the dukes, and it becomes like a hockey fight where they basically drop the gloves and they start to, exactly. They start to and then all of a sudden, like, Jose Ramirez throws across, and Tim Anderson drops down so hard onto the dirt that he basically, I don't know, it felt like for a second he was sent into the Shadow Realm.
Yeah, really. I mean, and you and I were debating this over the last couple of days, and I think Jose Ramirez overreacted a lot over a tag. He slid between Tim Anderson's leg at second base where the tag was put. For some reason, some guys get sensitive when you put the glove on their back and hold it there. And I think Jose Ramirez is the one that instigated this fight, not Tim Anderson.
Well, we don't know the intensity that Tim Anderson loved. Like, we're not playing that game. We don't know if it was a tap. We don't know if it was a. I'm gonna try to not smack myself on the head so hard. That's why I was like. That's why I did that. I'm like, I'm not gonna smack myself in the head so hard live on this show.
I mean, the way this went, I just was like, all right. But you know what I will say? I love the old-fashioned fisticuffs. I was missing it.
and they fought like the old fighters too. It was like, you want to go, sucker?
You want to go? You want to go? You want to go? And I was like, oh my god, yes!
And then Jose Ramirez hits Tim Anderson with a cross so hard that he ends up in the Field of Dreams, according to a meme.
I mean, it was so great. It kind of reminded me. I think I said it. When did I say? Oh, Batista Rognet Odor in Texas, where Odor lands a left cross right across Batista's face. But this is wrong, by the way, that Anderson got 6 and Ramirez got 3. I think this is wrong. They both had the same amount of fight in this. They both should have gotten 6 games.
I think it has to do, and I think MLB is starting to realize this, that Tim Anderson has a bit of, let's put it lightly, issues to him.
The tweets?
Like, there's the tweet rant that he went on, which, are those still up, or are they...
I'll tell you in a second. I'm looking.
By the way, we can't call them tweets anymore. We have to call them X's.
Oh, God.
Thanks.
So, let's see. Oh, they're still up here.
Okay, they are still up. And then
well,
you got...
Wait a minute. Does that go to, and we'll get to this one after your comment about the whole White Sox atmosphere.
Yeah, so, I mean, there was this thing with Ramirez. There was last year where Tim Anderson and Josh Donaldson got into it over the whole Jackie comments. But yes, now it stretches into, I guess since we're going through this rather quick, let's bring up the other side to this story. So, Kenyon Middleton. Obviously, that name came up during our trade deadline stream, was traded from the White Sox to the Yankees. And basically, he was interviewed about his time during the White Sox. And Kenyon Middleton is basically making accusations of a toxic culture within the White Sox locker room. Basically, a no rules kind of atmosphere is going on, and there is no true leadership within that team.
Gee, doesn't that make sense now with Tim Anderson, doesn't it?
And Kenny Middleton said, he wasn't a fan. He was thinking about the prospect of going to the Yankees and shave, but he said because of the culture in that White Sox locker room, he said, I couldn't shave my beard off quick enough to get out of there.
I mean, I get what he's saying, but it's still a little odd the way he put that sentence. But now it makes sense. If Tim Anderson is as fucked up, as he is right now, with all the tweets that he put up, and they're still up here, by the way, they have not been taken down. The White Sox haven't gone to him and said, hey, take these down, toxic, like whatever. Mm-hmm. Now it makes sense. Because if he's as fucked up as this, then maybe there is a toxic culture issue in the White Sox locker room.
And the manager and GM can come out all they want and talk about how it's not true. But you know what? From the optics of it, Nick, the White Sox have been one of the most disappointing teams in these last couple of years. With all the talent that they have, that they should have been a team that blossomed to the top of the AL Central. And
the last couple of years, they should have finished in first. They should have.
And now last year, and that's the thing. It's like, it seems like to be this whole boys will be boys kind of atmosphere in there. And then you've got also the fact that they were talking about like Lance Lynn and and somebody else on the team weren't there at the start of spring training because they went over to the World Baseball Classic. So that didn't set a good tone. But here's the thing. It hasn't worked this year with this whole, laissez-faire, relaxed kind of attitude. And then last year when you had Tony La Russa, 70-something years old, already been in the Hall of Fame, Tony La Russa, old school style baseball, it didn't work with him. So what kind of culture have you created? Like, what is going to work? What true leadership can be put into that organization to make it work?
There is no way to make this organization work right now. They need to find a younger guy that could be the manager. You have an owner who's effed up, who's run Chicago for decades.
But you also need somebody, I don't want to say with an iron fist, but somebody who can still take charge and say,
okay, it's ironic that you say that because Tony La Russa technically was an iron fist, and look what happened to Tim Anderson.
And that's why I said it doesn't work. Well, now you also have some stories that are basically, it was that La Russa was just there and really had no real power.
No, La Russa was too busy getting DUI tickets on the side of the street trying to say, I'm Tony La Russa and I don't need a ticket. But the White Sox organization is just a mess. It's a mess. There's no way right now in the current structure, the way it is, for this organization to function properly. Tim Anderson, he might need to go get mental health help, the way he's acting.
And as far as the baseball aspect is concerned, with the fact that they're underperforming for 2 years now, the fact that you have this culture, dare I say, like already after you blew it up very recently already, do you have to blow it up again and start again?
By the way, I was very surprised that they didn't trade Dylan Cease at the deadline. Like,
I know,
and a lot of people are saying, like,
and he's the one I feel most bad for because I feel like he could very well be a very reliable arm for any of these teams contending for within the postseason picture.
Right, and they could have gotten a decent amount of capital back for that if they traded him, but they basically came out with the hard stance. He's not tradable. He's untouchable. By the way, I hate that term when people say untouchable because anyone is touchable.
Well, that's the thing. For a team like the White Sox, who are what they are right now, to say that he's untouchable, what, do you think that all of a sudden next year you're going to turn it around and all of a sudden you're going to be, granted, the division for the AL Central, at least at the start, was not great. There was a point where you had 2 500 teams basically leading the way. And as of our recording in the AL Central, you got the Twins leading the division at 60-55. This a similar kind of record to which the Yankees are in when they're basically near dead last in the AL East.
Well, the AL Central has been a bust the last couple of years.
But that's my point, is that maybe they have some substance in saying, because the division is so weak next year we can rebound. But who's not to say the Twins or the Guardians next year have a rebound themselves, and all of a sudden that they're the clear leader in that division.
I wouldn't even say the Guardians have been playing good baseball either. Like that whole division's not playing good baseball. Like it's a free for all. Who wants to win? Who wants the division?
And that's the shameful part, is that this should be the White Sox time, but they have not played up to the level that they should.
I mean, they got out from under Jose Abreu, who is actually not having a good year with the Astros. But I don't know. The team is going nowhere. And unfortunately, it's just the White Sox are a bad team. They're going through a bad stretch. It's not like, what was it? 05 was the year that they won. Yep. And that was the year that they had, Burley and Konerko and all those guys. Brzezinski. I mean, we're talking a long time ago. Like, they have not been good since 2005. So
it's a shame, especially for all that young talent that they had when the likes of Anderson and Yoan Moncada, and they were all coming up. We were thinking, okay, like how the Astros were at the end of the 2010s, like the Braves are now. The White Sox are going to be another one of those teams that have all that young core and could be on a winning stretch. Nope. Hasn't played out that way.
Yep. It is what it is.
All right. Let's talk about the Orioles. Moving over to that AL East. And they're in the headlines. But you know what? I mean, granted, they have basically went past the Rays. Them and the Rays are fighting for the top of the AL East. But it's not over that. But it actually does play into this story a little bit.
I see what you did there.
I didn't even mean to. Just off the top of my head. But Kevin Brown. So Kevin Brown, they have a very young announcer named Kevin Brown. No, it is not the Kevin Brown they used to pitch back in the day. Very young guy. And basically, he was talking. It was prior to a game for the Orioles. I think they were
in the pregame. Yeah.
What happened?
It was in the pregame.
Yeah, it was during a pregame moment. And I think it was a game against the Rays in mid-July.
Yeah, Tropicana Field. It was a pregame for Masson, which is the Orioles network,
and the Nationals network.
And the Nationals network. But during an Orioles game, he's doing a little pregame. I don't know if it was exactly pregame. Like they must have been. They throw to the play-by-play announcer a lot during the pregame shows, and he was talking about how the Orioles have struggled at Tropicana Field for like the last 16 or 17 games, I think.
Yeah, they were 15-1 in their last 16 games at the Trop.
Okay, and then there's a lot of factors here in this story. One is the graphic that says tropical depression, which was another one that people were questioning about and what the graphic said. And then there was some things that, by the way, you and I watched this video 10 times waiting for some kind of dark, decrepit thing to be said. There was not one horrible thing said in what he said.
He literally was just talking the truth. And then what you just said, Nick, whose involvement of the Yankees radio booth said, Kevin, I think it was Kevin Youthful.
Kevin Nicholas, yes, for Nesson.
Said that. Gary Cohen of the Mets broadcast said that. Michael Kay of the Yankees TV broadcast said that. Everyone was just waiting for what it was supposed to be. And, you hear it a couple of times like, wait, I can't find anything. Because there was nothing. There was nothing offensive said. He was just stating fact. And somebody in the Orioles organization, whether it be in the front office or good old John Angelos, who's the day-to-day operator of the team, or hell, maybe even the 90-something-year-old Peter Angelos, said something to John. Like basically, somebody had a hissy fit. Somebody had a temper tantrum like a little 2-year-old, and basically got Kevin Brown thrown off of the air, suspended. Actually, I should say he was suspended from TV broadcast, and then the next series he was part of the radio crew, and then he was taken off completely. And now the Orioles, by the way, an update from a couple of days ago, now all of a sudden are saying, oh, he's going to be back Friday on the air on TV.
This makes no sense, okay? So you've been part of baseball broadcasts for college. I called basketball games and baseball games for college. I've never heard, by the way, I was critical of the team when I was on the air calling the games. Never was told anything. If I thought the team was playing horribly, I would say it. I was never approached. And by the way, the head coach of the basketball team was the athletic director also. So,
and that's the thing.
And they didn't say anything to me.
But that's the thing. As the broadcaster, obviously you can't go critical of the team without substance just because let's say because that's not the team that you grew up rooting for, because there's somebody on the team that you have a little beef with in the locker room when you're trying to get like stories and such, you know, like if you have something without substance, then obviously you can take things too far. But when you're just stating actual, just the facts, like Kevin Brown did, the actual information about their performances at the Trop. And by the way, it wasn't even criticism. It was that the last couple of years they had struggled at Trop, and that this year they have done so much better. Like I said, to the point where now they and the Rays are competing for the top spot in the American League East, that they managed to close the gap on, when the Rays went on that early stretch during the opening season, those winning ways, we said, okay, nobody's going to catch the Rays. That it's the division to the win. It's their division to win. And now all of a sudden, the Orioles have now swooped in, and now we got a 2-team race. He was praising the team, and he got suspended indefinitely for it.
I mean, this is what I like to call the politics of sports, where basically an owner is mad because he doesn't like what is being said about his team, even though he said nothing negative about the team. Kevin Brown, who I've had the chance to listen to.
Nick, no.
What?
No.
What?
He was talking about lack of success previously. That's negative. We can't have anything negative here. We got to have all the positivity, because if we have something negative for our fan base, then for our
emotional damage.
Damn it, you beat me to it. I was going to say that there is a bunch of emotional damage in the Orioles organization. And what's next? Now they're gonna stop us from going to Oriole games because we're talking negatively about Peter Angelos' organization.
Yeah, we're going to talk bad about John Angelos and the day-to-day operations because, for all the success that the team has, they do something stupid like this. And now, Nick, you and I are going to have wanted posters at the Camden Yards. Do not let this person into Camden Yards.
And by the way, I need to point out something else from the graphics and the broadcasting perspective. Apparently, Michael Kay was saying this on his radio show the other day, that those graphics are probably made an hour to 2 hours in advance.
Right.
So wait. So I'm going to point something out you were going to say, which was and I agreed with you, if you're going to go after the broadcaster who's on TV and you're going to suspend him, you got to suspend the color person, you got to suspend the director, the AP, the broadcasting truck. You might as well suspend everybody on Masson if that's the case.
You might as well just get interns to run your broadcast for a week or something like that. And the reason that I was going to bring up is because for those who aren't aware, basically how it works with some of these sports telecasts and broadcasts is that you are given game notes. And that's something else to make note of. I think it was in the game notes. So when you're a commentator, the whatever organization, the public relations people.
PR, yeah.
PR give you like game notes that has information about the players, about stats, any recent trends and such. They do that's something that I think PR teams go underappreciated for, is that they put together a lot of information.
100%. 100% the PR teams are the backbone of the organization because, again, they can control, there's that word again, control what goes over the broadcasts. Not that I'm saying that they make you say certain things, but at least they could say, hey, here's the game notes, here's what's in them. And if I'm not mistaken, it probably said that they were 0-16.
Yes, it did. It stated that fact that he read the 0-15-1 in their last 16 series or whatever it was.
And by the way, a lot of those things come from the notes. You think that they're making this shit up during the broadcast? No.
So then you may have to suspend your public relations team too.
Actually, you know what? I'll even go one step better. Hey, Angelos, you know how you employ all these people? You should go suspend yourself too for employing all these people. It's your fault. I hate to say this, but it all comes back to who pays the checks for everybody. Angelos, they pay. So if you're going to suspend him, then you need to go away and be suspended for as long as Kevin Brown was.
It's a joke. And like Michael Kay said, you know what? If they don't want Kevin Brown, then there's 29 other teams who do. Now, when Kay made that comment, he also said that maybe Manfred needs to get in here and do something about it. But I mean, we don't have this graphic here for no reason. We use this graphic because Rob Manfred just can't do anything.
Yeah, my thoughts on Rob Manfred.
Emotional damage.
I mean, this part of this is Rob Manfred's fault too, by the way, because he is responsible for the owners that make these decisions.
Right.
As
Well,
Kay said, oh, God.
no, but I was gonna say, but that's the thing. Yes, the owners are his bosses technically, but this is one of those situations where when you've got people from all over baseball, from broadcasters to fans, arguing and saying that Kevin Brown is being treated so unfairly, this is where you, as the commissioner, yes, the owners are your bosses, but this is where the power then goes into your hands and say, guess what? I'm getting complaints from all over baseball. I have to protect, as you said, Nick, as we say, the integrity and the image of the game. You got to bring Kevin Brown back. Now,
what integrity? There's no integrity in this game.
I mean, if there was somebody other than Rob Manfred in charge, maybe we'd have a shot at that.
I'm telling you right now, if Rob Manfred wasn't the commissioner of this sport, whoever it was would have gone and handled this problem. I'm telling you right now. And by the way, we didn't find out about this until what, 2 weeks after it actually happened?
Yep. I forget who uncovered it first, but somebody had uncovered it.
It was awful announcing.
Yeah, it was awful, but they were trying to fight back against it and basically saying it's not true. And then comes that report that Friday, tomorrow, Kevin Brown's suspension will be over. He will return.
I want to point out one other thing. That awful announcing tweet that showed the video, 30 million impressions. 30 million.
And that's that many million impressions that are not in your favor, Baltimore.
The Baltimore organization is screwed up. The Angelos family needs to make this right. And also, and we know it's never going to happen, they need to apologize. We know that's not going to happen.
Well, you know what's funny? Because remember, it was an indefinite suspension. What I would have said is now, if Kevin Brown was not brought back, if they did announce, he's going to be brought back Friday, I feel like Kevin Brown could have actually said to John Angelos, all right, I'm going to sue you then.
I don't know if it would have stood up. I understand what you're talking about. You and I discussed like unlawful suspension and all that stuff.
Or at the very least, then I don't want to be tied down to you. Get me out. I want out of my contract then if you're going to treat me like this.
I get it. And by the way, David Cohn said it on a Yankee broadcast the other day. Like, when you attack one of us in our broadcasting MLB family, you attack everybody. And that's the one thing I appreciate about the MLB media, that they are very on top of when someone gets attacked. Like, they will go to town on whoever it is. The Orioles organization can't win here. They are as low as they can get, and it sucks because the Orioles are playing good baseball right now.
That's the thing, Nick. I mean, for as competitive a division as the AL East is, the most competitive division in all of baseball, everybody has something negative going on for them. The Orioles, you got this situation. The Rays, like the Yankees last year, they go off on that early season winning streak, and you think, okay, nobody is going to catch up to them. And now all of a sudden somebody has caught up to them. July and late June to July, they basically were an absolute free fall. The Yankees, I don't think we need to say anything that isn't already said when talking about the team on this show or on Hitting for the Cycle of Hank and John. The Red Sox also not in a good spot. I mean, just think about Ben Cruz's comments on the trade deadline, and you could reach out to him and he'd tell you all that's gone wrong. And then you got the Blue Jays, who are just there. So for all the competitiveness that is within that division, it's just a nightmare of headlines for all the teams in there.
Yeah, but the Orioles need to come out with an apology. We know it's not going to happen. They'll come out with some stupid PR statement, which is, well, we apologize for all the mistakes, but it's not sincere.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely not. All right. From one commissioner questionable decision or lack thereof to another. So, Alvin Kamara, the suspension has officially come down. We were anticipating it from the moment he got arrested in February for that altercation. I think it was some sort of bar fight during Pro Bowl weekend.
2022, yep. Or is it 2021? I don't remember.
Was it last year or was it this year, the Kamara arrest?
I think it... you might be right. It might have been Pro Bowl 2022.
Oh, no, it's 23. It was this year. I was like, wait, you said 22. I'm like, wait a minute, what?
No, I meant when the altercation happened.
It was in the 2023 Pro Bowl weekend. So this past one, Alvin Kamara was arrested for an altercation. I think it was some sort of bar fight. And basically, from the moment that happened, Nick, we said, all right, what's his suspension going to be? Because, and I think this was proven with quite a few cases, and we even brought it up during the whole Deshaun Watson thing, that you don't need to be criminally charged with anything for the NFL to come down on you. And we saw that last year. Deshaun Watson, now granted, we can talk about how it wasn't enough games. We can talk about the whole hoo-ha between the independent arbitrator, the NFL, and the NFLPA, and Deshaun that resulted in that 11 games. But basically, once Kamara had the handcuffs on him, we knew something was going on. And it basically was worsened when, I shouldn't say worsened, but he takes that plea deal to bring it down to the misdemeanor. And basically we say, okay, does that mean how many games is it going to be? And it's going to be a 3-game suspension. And like I said during the social media post that I made, I mean, you can take this and you can compare it. Obviously, we talked about that with the Deshaun Watson thing, how comparing apples and oranges with the different policies, whether it be the personal conduct policy versus the gambling policy versus the PED policy.
They're all different policies, right?
Right. But you think about it, even with those kind of contexts, you think about it. DeAndre Hopkins last year, PED, 6 games. Calvin Ridley last year, gambling, 1 year. Alvin Kamara gets handcuffed. 3 games.
No one said that Roger Goodell's decisions are logical. We've been saying that for many years.
Right, but that's the other part of my thing. That's the other part of my social video. What did I say? As as damning as it is, I'm also not surprised. This is typical, and I don't even know if I want to say Roger Goodell, just typical National Football League.
Oh no, this is a Roger Goodell decision. The commissioner makes the decision on all the suspensions.
Okay,
but
yes, but I'm saying like some of the issues about policies and suspensions even stretch back before Goodell.
Right. I mean, the way this goes, he got arrested. It was almost a felony. I think they had to bargain it down to a misdemeanor.
Right. Like I said, he had to take a plea bargain to a misdemeanor.
I mean, you got to give him 6 to 7 games at least here. I mean, like, he got arrested. He actually got arrested, but according to the NFL,
almost got a felony.
But according to the NFL, the big joke with the NFL is you get arrested. I guess you find your way back on the field in 2 games or less. So it doesn't really matter. This is the NFL in a nutshell. You gamble, you get suspended for a year, you get arrested. Just come back. We'll brace you with open arms. No problem.
So we thought that this was going to be Alvin Kamara.
Yeah.
And then Roger thought about it. And he decides, you know what? 3 games sounds perfect. What do you think?
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to be inside the brain of Roger Goodell. It's probably a circus going on in there, but I don't really know, to be honest.
Oh, did you say circus? And you know I can't play this music without going to this. Alas, that is for another day.
Well, we all knew this was going to be a problem. We all knew this was going to happen. Alvin Kamara is a bad guy. We know this. And
I mean, I liked his personality, everything. I liked his personality. I liked, his skills at running back, but he effed up. He effed up badly.
yeah, I mean, he's a bad guy. That's what I would say. He's a bad guy. I mean, he committed a misdemeanor. Well, really a felony, but a misdemeanor.
To the point now where the Saints, for their first 3 games, have to bring in Kareem Hunt.
And how ironic is that, considering he's had his own issues?
Right. So, I mean, and you know what? And it goes to what I said. Like, I know this is one of those situations when we talk about suspensions and stuff, we really shouldn't talk about the football side, but you know what? Alvin Kamara's got a lot to prove this football season. Last year was a really bad season. I know it was a bad season overall with the NFC South and the Saints team.
He was hurt also.
And Kamara was hurt, yes, but I mean, think about this with the Saints. Now you got Derek Carr under center. Now the Drew Brees era is officially dead and gone. And with the NFL, but you know what? You also have Tom Brady, who is dead, who is gone. The Tom Brady era is dead and gone in the NFL. We think. But you also got the Panthers, who were getting young, made all those free agent signings, have their young quarterback now. So for the Saints, in order to have a shot, you know, Derek Carr's got to deliver, and Alvin Kamara, he's got to be healthy. I know we talk about the average length of a running back, and Kamara has reached beyond that point, but Alvin Kamara still has shown he has the ability to be one of the better running backs in this game. His downslide is very recent. Is this a permanent start to a downslide, or can this be a rebound? And if you're the Saints, Nick, you gotta hope it's a rebound.
You hope, because right now your quarterback situation is a lot worse than it was.
Or you gotta hope that you have. Well, first of all, I don't know if you can say that because you went from. I mean, who was the Saints quarterback last year? Was it Jameis?
I thought it was Jameis, or I don't know. Jameis is not even on that roster anymore. But
he is. He's still the backup. Yeah, it was Jameis, by the way.
But I don't know. Derek Carr is an improvement, but again, look at all the shit he had to deal with in Vegas.
Yeah.
So,
but my point is, Alvin Kamara has got to have, for how last year went between this and his bad performing 2022 season. You got to hope you got to hope to play better back at the level that you were, or at least to a level where, I mean, you think about the Saints in that run, Nick, the 1-2 punch combination Kamara had with Mark Ingram. You got to hope that basically Kareem Hunt can fill that Mark Ingram role.
You would hope. I mean, it also helps to have a serviceable quarterback again. That might actually help Kamara, because with Derek Carr being more of a throwing threat than Jameis Winston was, maybe that opens the field up to Alvin Kamara to be an RPG type guy and spread that ball out. So,
all right, one last story to go through, Nick, and it's an NBA story. That's the good news. The bad news is it involves your favorite team in the Lakers, but not LeBron. Anthony Davis, AD. Not my AD, but fine.
Yeah, so Anthony Davis gets a 3-year, $186 million max extension, the richest annual extension in NBA history, tying into the team through 2028. And I was helping Paul with 3&D, and I came across an interesting stat, which most people are not going to understand, so I have to explain it.
Okay, your floor is yours.
So technically, he's making $62 million a year. In the contract sense, he's making $62 million a year. But in the real world, he's going to make $24 million a year. Now, you're probably...
no! 24, only $24 million. Only 24
Wait.
million.
Only?
Oh, my God!
Oh, that's so depressing. Oh, my God.
Emotional damage!
So, you're probably wondering how this number came to be, right? So, according to Andrew Petcash, and I don't know what, I think it's either Sports Business Journal or whatever platform, I can't remember at the moment. But, so, the taxes alone make this way worse. So listen. So the taxes, we already know this, the taxes are steep in California. So starting at 62 million, federal taxes are 22.9 million. Right off the top. Oof. That's right off the top. Then you have NBA escrow for 6 million, which I think that's where they're afraid of these NBA athletes going bankrupt, so they make them put money away. Mm-hmm. Then you have the California tax, 4.1 million. Then you have the agent fee, 1.8.
And then, hold on, Nick, there's something else you're forgetting.
Well, Taxman, yes.
Look, it's not Manfred in this case. It's going to be Taxman Silver.
Then you have something called the jock tax, which you were confused when I said it to you.
Yes, and I'm still with the jock tax.
The jock tax is essentially like where you pay taxes because you're not living in one place, so as you're traveling around as an athlete, they charge you a tax. And then on top of that, the last one, 1.4 million FICA and Medicare, some medical insurance. So that goes from 62 to 24.
And here's the thing about it, Nick. And it's not, maybe it's the money, but I know you're explaining everything. But it's just, you're tying Anthony Davis to the Lakers through 2028. Now, granted, Anthony Davis is a star on that team. Granted, he can still play, like a star. But the Lakers last season it was a rough one. And I know they made the run. I know they made the run that they did in the postseason, but the path there was just not easy. And
I don't count 2020, by the way.
I know you don't. But my point is Anthony Davis gets banged up. He has his injuries. Like I said, he could still play at the star level, but it's maybe a step or two
When he feels like it.
what he used to. But my point is, Nick, we've talked about what LeBron was doing about, we got all these veterans now on the team. And then next year, once Bronny comes in the league, he's probably going to leave him high and dry unless they sign Bronny.
Right. So the Lakers are going to be stuck with Anthony Davis when LeBron
for 2028. That's my point. Yes.
So they're going to be stuck. They have all this money. Now, like I said, in the NBA world, the value of the contract is $62 million a year. So if they go to try and trade it, they have to figure out how to match it up to $62 million, not the 24 once it hits the real world money.
And that's gonna be a steep price to try and figure out.
What in God's name is Anthony Davis worth $62 million a year? Even LeBron's not worth $62 million a year.
I don't get it. I just don't get it. But I guess it's the veteran presence on that team.
And by the way, Giannis had a great quote tweet on this. Who the hell is Fika and Jock, and can they hoop? And I said that was great right there. That was good. But just so people understand, when you go and yell at these athletes and you say, "Boo! You make $62 million a year. You suck." You need to kind of look into the background and realize that 40 million of it is coming off for taxes.
Yeah, you know what? But you know what? $24 million is still more than you and I will ever see in a lifetime, Morgasen.
Well, at least for now. But my point is that people need to realize that just because they see the value number, it's not necessarily what they make. And that's why on those large contracts in any sport, that's why they're so ridiculous, because they have to pull all that money out for taxes. Especially New York and LA.
Yeah, I can talk about New York taxes all day, but I don't want to do that.
All right, hit that last banner right below because I want to talk about some other stuff. Do you see the banner?
Off the bench. Okay.
So let's talk some media. Okay, we have a few minutes here.
Okay.
So where do you want me to start? Do you want me to start with some of the ESPN madness, or do you want me to start with?
So the ESPN madness, yes.
Okay, so we all know Malika Andrews, right? She's at ESPN. She started as a sideline reporter, really now hosts NBA Today on ESPN. She's now the new host to the NBA Finals. New host, taking over for Mike Greenberg, because now we don't have to see Mike Greenberg a million places anymore. Nice. Big story. Malika Andrews taking over as host. What do you think about that?
Good for her. I think she's got a good opportunity right there, and she's very talented.
If I'm not mistaken, I think she's like 28 or 29 years old, I think. Big job. I mean, remember when Rachel Nichols went out with her controversies and Maria Taylor went out, and so she got her time to shine. So I think that was great, and no one needs to see Mike Greenberg on 10 million shows anymore. It's like enough already. Also, ESPN Radio announced their new morning show, the national platform. Again, makes no sense. It's Chris Canty, Evan Cohen, who does mornings on Mad Dog Sports Radio, leaving Sirius, and Michelle Smallman, who was at Sirius, was at ESPN for a long period of time, left to go back to St. Louis, and then came back to ESPN Radio again.
Nick, content over commentators. You could just stick anybody anywhere at this point if you're ESPN.
The one thing I'll give them credit for is they actually went with radio people for a change. They didn't try to stick like 3 TV people like they did with Kellerman and Keyshawn and Jay Will. So now they have that again. Also, other news: Undisputed, our favorite program in the entire world, has announced a revolving door. Gee, doesn't that sound familiar? Doesn't it?
Let's see. Richard Sherman is one name. Lil Wayne is another.
And now Rachel Nichols.
Oh, joy.
So let's take every commercial person there is and put them with Skip Bayless, who's allowed. Yay! And one more spot for news. Barstool which someone didn't like that I talked Barstool on here for the longest time. But Barstool has officially back in the hands of Dave Portnoy, 100%, no longer owned by Penn Gaming. Now Barstool goes. What?
I was gonna lead it into the next part, but you want to go ahead?
Go ahead.
Okay, now
No, go ahead.
Penn is going to be partnering up with ESPN for ESPN Bet.
Yeah, I don't feel about that 10-year like billion-dollar deal, at least from what I was reading. But Barstool is now back to the pirate ship. They are now going to be what they used to. Well, that was their mantra back in the day, where they basically fired cannons and they didn't care who they hit in the process.
Mm-hmm.
So now they're back to the old ways. Penn Gaming went their separate ways and divested, and now they're with ESPN making a 10-year deal, thinking, but ESPN's a little late to the gambling game, just a tad.
I know. I mean, to Dave Portnoy's credit, he gets all his company back for basically nothing. He's made all that money back. Now, there is the caveat that if he sells again, he has to give half of it to Penn. He is adamant that he is not going to sell again. And you know what? I want to believe him. At the same time, if Jeff Bezos comes to you and says $20 billion for your company, is he really going to turn it down?
I mean, first of all, I don't think it would ever be that much money, but
I know, but my point.
And also, like I told you before, like you can't separate Dave from the brand. He's really the brand at Barstool. So he could sell it for as much as he wants, but he's going to be attached to it forever.
Oh, I didn't say to get rid of Portnoy. I'm just saying that if somebody came to him, $5 billion. Let me put it to more realistic: $5 billion for Barstool, like Penn did. Dave is going to have to at least think about it, right?
I think they eventually sold the all the Barstool for like $550 million. I think that was the total number. So
I said Bezos. That's why I threw the billion in there.
I mean, it would be a whole different conversation if there was billions of dollars involved. But he's going to he sticks it to everybody. He's not going to give any money away at this point. And you know what? I think it's better for them. They can be who they want. They don't have to worry about regulation and getting gambling licenses and all that stuff. So I don't know. I think it's good. You're going to see better content out of Barstool, I think, because of it.
And that's going to do it for this edition of Empty the Bench. So one more time here, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe, hit the notification bell so you get notified of everything here at the Empty the Bench Network, from Empty the Bench, Game On, MMA Outsiders, Fruity Cereal, so much more. Hitting for the cycle. Football season is coming, so there will be a wide range of football content that's about to make its way over here within the
a lot more than last year.
Yeah.
So
hit the subscribe button so you can subscribe here in youtube.com/ETV Network. We're closing in on 500 subscribers. Thank you all for your support. We hope to have your continued support as we go through this process. If you are listening on our audio-only platforms of Acast, etc., make sure to come here to the video feed on YouTube and hit the subscribe button. If you are watching us on our YouTube feed, make sure to take Empty the Bench with you on the go, on Acast and all the audio-only platforms as well. You don't have to look at Nick and I's ugly faces every week. You can just listen in. And, of course, don't forget to go to etvpodcast.com for information about the network, as well as blogs from our hosts. Shout out to Hank and Jen, who have been really holding it down with the posts for the blog.
Yeah, a lot more blog content coming along the way as well. So just make sure you stay tuned for all that.
All right.
Well,
that's going to do
it. We made it to another end. We made it to another end of an episode. We're approaching 200 episodes. So make sure you stay with us. We will get to 200 at some point. I think next month, maybe.
Yeah, early September.
All right. So for Tom Albano, I'm Nick Morgasen. We'll see you next week for episode 196. Good night, everybody.
Take care, everyone.